There she was, standing in my front yard, measuring the exact height of my plants with a tape measure. Jennifer Daniels, 52, president of the Pinecrest Gardens Neighborhood Association for over a decade, was dressed impeccably, as if she were ready for a real estate photo shoot. I watched her from the window while she took pictures of my carefully cultivated organic vegetable garden. Subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to get access to more stories like this. "Mr. Montgomery, this is unacceptable," she declared when I opened the door. "Front gardens devalue the neighborhood. You will receive a formal notice." As a math teacher, I'm used to clear, objective problems with definite solutions. But this situation defied logic. I reread the HOA rules manual 3 times after she left. There wasn't any mention of a ban on residential gardens. "Ryan, you know your organic garden is award-winning." "I don't get why she causes so much trouble," commented my neighbor, Mr. Anderson, a 71-year-old who'd always admired my tomatoes. At the HOA meeting the following week, I came prepared with neighborhood maps, photos of other unkempt gardens that never received notifications, and even a petition signed by 8 neighbors who appreciated my garden. The manual doesn't specifically prohibit domestic gardens, I argued before the 5-member board. "I keep everything neat and pest-free, and I consider this part of my rights as a homeowner." Jennifer smiled that politely cruel smile before replying, "The manual clearly states that all landscaping modifications must maintain the neighborhood's aesthetic standard. Tomatoes and cucumbers simply don't fit that standard." The vote was quick, 3 for Jennifer, 1 against, and Mr. Anderson abstained. I had 14 days to remove the garden or face daily fines. What came next was even worse. 3 days later, Jennifer called an extraordinary meeting and changed the HOA rules. Now the manual explicitly banned food-producing plants in areas visible from the property. The amendment passed with the same majority. I reluctantly removed my garden, replacing it with ornamental shrubs approved by the HOA. I thought the problem was solved, but I was mistaken. Jennifer had found her favorite target. A month later, I found a registered letter in the mailbox. Apparently, my automated HOA fee payment hadn't been processed. I called the bank immediately, and they confirmed the payment had left my account, but the deposit email address had been recently changed. "I'm sorry, Mr. Montgomery, but we have a lien on your property for $1,200 in unpaid fees, plus $4,600 in administrative fines and processing costs," Jennifer said over the phone, her voice barely hiding her satisfaction. "This is absurd." The payment was made. And how did a $350 monthly fee turn into $5,800? Everything is detailed in the legal document we sent. You have 30 days to resolve the situation before we start foreclosure proceedings. I shook my head in disbelief as I looked at the document in my hands. I paid the full amount immediately, using nearly all my savings, and I sent the receipt by email, registered mail, and even delivered it personally to Jennifer's house. 2 weeks later, I received another official letter, "Due to a processing error, your recent payment was not correctly applied to your account. The foreclosure process will proceed according to legal schedule." My heart raced when I spoke with a lawyer who specialized in HOA disputes. "Honestly, Ryan, they're playing dirty," the lawyer said as he adjusted his glasses. Unfortunately, foreclosure laws for HOAs in this state heavily favor the associations. They can auction your house for a fraction of its value to recover the fees, and you'd only get what's left after all expenses are paid. "How much time do we have?" 45 days. And to be honest, I think she timed everything perfectly at the minimum legal deadlines. It looks like she's done this before. On leaving the office, I made up my mind. If Jennifer Daniels wanted war, she was about to meet a worthy opponent. It was time to start digging into the all-powerful HOA president. The auction notice arrived on an ordinary Thursday. My 3-bedroom house, which I had paid $320,000 for 5 years ago, was going to be sold to the highest bidder in 10 days. The auction would be held in the regional courthouse lobby at 10 a.m. "We need a plan B," the lawyer said while reviewing the paperwork. We could try for an emergency court order, but given this judge's record with HOA cases, our chances are slim. I spent the next 9 days deep in investigation mode. My retired parents agreed to lend me their savings. No one's going to take our son's house because of a condo dictator, my mother said as she signed the bank transfer. The day of the auction dawned sunny, ironically beautiful. I arrived an hour early wearing my most formal suit, the same one I wear for math conferences. The courthouse lobby was already filled with well-dressed people carrying briefcases. Real estate speculators are like vultures, they can sniff out a good opportunity. Jennifer wasn't in sight, but I noticed a middle-aged man with her surname embroidered on his pricey blazer. Paul Daniels, her brother-in-law. It made sense, she didn't want to get her hands dirty. Lot 47, property in Pinecrest Gardens, starting bid $180,000, announced the auctioneer, a bald man with a monotone voice who'd clearly foreclosed on hundreds of families over his career. Paul Daniels immediately raised his paddle. $180,000. A woman in a red blazer offered $190,000. Then another man offered $200,000. Paul countered, $210,000. The tension in the room was palpable, but I kept a neutral expression. People who were really buying houses to live in had already backed out, only the investors remained. $290,000, said the woman in the red blazer with her final bid. $300,000, replied Paul Daniels, an arrogant smile on his face. The woman shook her head and lowered her paddle. The auctioneer began, $300,000, going once. I raised my paddle. $325,000. Paul turned sharply, shocked to see me, then quickly recovered, $340,000. $355,000, I countered without hesitation. The bidding war continued. Paul grew increasingly frustrated, checking his phone furiously, probably in direct contact with Jennifer. $370,000, he said, his voice wavering. I waited until the last second. $375,000. Paul checked his phone one last time, then lowered his paddle. The auctioneer banged his gavel, sold for $375,000. While I was signing the preliminary documents, I noticed Jennifer standing at the back of the room, her face twisted in anger. Our eyes met briefly. I kept a neutral expression as she quickly left. I was officially paying to buy my own house. The irony wasn't lost on me. 3 days later, with the deal finalized and the keys to my home back in my hands, it was time for phase 2 of the plan. It wasn't enough just to get my house back, the entire community needed liberation from Jennifer Daniels' reign of terror. During my pre-auction research, I uncovered some disturbing patterns. Jennifer had violated her own HOA rules at least a dozen times, including unauthorized pergolas and garage extensions without approval. Her method was simple: change the rules temporarily to allow her projects, then switch them back. Even more alarming were the conflicts of interest. The landscaping company with an exclusive neighborhood contract, owned by Jennifer's brother. The security company, run by her cousin. The management firm that charged exorbitant fees for special administrative services, registered in her daughter's name. Then there were the financial records. With help from Mr. Anderson, a former board member with access to certain documents, I compiled a complete record of the past 5 years, misused reserve funds, unauthorized expenses, and monthly consulting fees paid to an LLC that led all the way back to Jennifer. The pattern was clear and well documented. I started quietly, meeting with other homeowners who had had problems with Jennifer. First in local cafes outside the neighborhood, then in small groups at each other's houses. I shared copies of the documents, always keeping the sources confidential. She put a lien on my house because my lawn was just half an inch too long, confessed a 70-something lady. I had to pay $1,800 in fines. I got a violation for having the wrong shade of white on my fence, said another resident. When I hired an independent painter, he was banned from the community. I had to use her brother's company, which charged triple. The stories kept coming. With each meeting, more residents showed up, many bringing their own evidence of abuses. Fear was turning into collective outrage. "It's time to act," I announced in a meeting with over 30 homeowners in Mr. Anderson's living room. Our HOA rules allow a special election if 40% of homeowners sign a petition. We're almost there. A week later, we hit 43%. I even hired a delivery service to send official notifications to every board member, including Jennifer, calling for a special meeting in 2 weeks. The response was immediate. I got a violation notice the very next day for holding commercial meetings in a residential area. 3 other key organizers also received notices for minor infractions. "We're really getting under her skin," I told the others. "That's exactly what we want." Jennifer tried to cancel the special meeting by citing improper procedures, but our lawyer, now representing the group, cited the exact statutes that guaranteed our right to hold the meeting. She then changed her tactic by rescheduling the meeting for a Tuesday at 2 p.m., when most people would be busy at work. We anticipated the move. We collected legal proxies from those who couldn't attend, ensuring representation for over 65% of the homeowners. On the day of the meeting, the community center was more packed than ever. Jennifer arrived right at 2 p.m., dressed formally and accompanied by 3 board members. Her composure faltered for a moment when she saw the crowd. "Before we begin, I must inform you that only current homeowners can vote," she declared, regaining her composure. "And only issues on the official agenda can be discussed." "We fully agree," replied our lawyer. "The agenda includes a motion of confidence in the current board, followed by immediate elections if necessary. All in accordance with Section 8, Paragraph 4 of the bylaws." The next 3 hours were intense. We presented carefully organized evidence of mismanagement, conflicts of interest, selective rule enforcement, and possible legal violations. Several homeowners shared emotional testimonies about their experiences. Jennifer tried to interrupt several times by citing procedures and rules. Each time she objected, our lawyer countered with the exact section of the bylaws that allowed us to continue. "If these baseless allegations continue, I'll consider a defamation lawsuit," Jennifer threatened when I showed detailed slides outlining contracts with companies linked to her family. "All the documents presented are public or legally obtained," our lawyer replied. "In fact, if this meeting does not go forward as required by the bylaws, we've already prepared a formal complaint to the State Attorney General detailing potential violations of State Property Association law. I have copies for anyone who wants to see them." Finally, it was time to vote. Jennifer demanded an open vote, but the bylaws call for secret ballots on issues of confidence. We distributed verified ballots with property numbers to prevent fraud. The votes were counted by 3 homeowners chosen on the spot, with oversight from both sides. The outcome: 178 votes in favor of removing the current board, 17 against, and 5 abstentions. Jennifer stayed expressionless as the result was announced, though her hands trembled slightly. "This is completely irregular. I'll consult our lawyers about the legality of this procedure." "The bylaws are very clear," our lawyer replied. "The interim board takes over immediately until the next regular election, unless the members here vote for a special election right now." The vote for an immediate election was overwhelming. Jennifer Daniels and her board were officially removed. In their place, we elected 5 new members, including Mr. Anderson as interim president. While Jennifer hurried out, leaving behind a folder full of documents, I realized this victory was only the beginning. The real change for the community would take much more work, but the first and hardest step had been taken. The most ironic part? During my research, I discovered that Jennifer herself was 3 months behind on her HOA fees. The power transition in the HOA turned out to be even more turbulent than we'd expected. Jennifer refused to hand over the complete financial records, claiming they were under audit by her personal accountant. The interim board had to get a court order to access the association's bank accounts. When we finally got in, the situation was even worse than we imagined. She withdrew $47,000 from the reserve fund 2 days after the vote, explained our new treasurer, a retired accountant. The transfer was labeled as emergency legal fees, but there was no contract or matching invoice. Mr. Anderson shook his head disappointedly. I always knew she took liberties, but I never imagined it would be this shameless. While we reorganized the management of the condominium, I kept investigating Jennifer. My almost traumatic experience with her had taught me one crucial lesson: knowledge is power, especially when it's properly documented. Through public records, I discovered that Jennifer's corner mansion had been refinanced 3 times over the last 5 years. The pattern suggested she was constantly pulling equity from the property to support her ostentatious lifestyle. Her monthly mortgage payments must have been huge. Even more revealing, during her month-long trip to Europe last summer, she didn't pay her own HOA fee. At that time, she was the only one with access to the system to record violations, so she obviously ignored her own lapse. Now, with the new board closely examining the records, that discrepancy was clearly documented. 3 months after Jennifer's removal, I got a call from Mr. Anderson. Ryan, you need to see this. Jennifer is officially 3 months behind on her HOA fees. We sent the official notices according to procedure, but she completely ignored them. She probably thinks we don't have the guts to act against her. An idea began to form in my mind. What exactly are our options according to the bylaws? The same ones she used against you and others: liens, fines, and eventually foreclosure. And who sets the fines and administrative fee schedule? Mr. Anderson smiled slightly. The board, following the precedents they set. And guess who set the precedent for astronomical fines for minor infractions? Jennifer Daniels. Exactly. In the following weeks, we followed the manual to the letter, the very manual Jennifer had refined over the years to maximize her power. We sent registered notices, applied fines according to the very structure she had created, and initiated the lien process on the exact day allowed by the bylaws. Jennifer finally responded after receiving the lien notice, showing up furiously at a monthly board meeting. This is personal persecution, and you all know it, she declared, interrupting the agenda. I'm going through a temporary financial reorganization and demand an extension. Ms. Daniels, I replied calmly, we are following exactly the procedures set during your tenure. In fact, we've reviewed the minutes from the past 5 years and found no instance where you granted an extension to any homeowner in a similar situation. That's different. In what way, exactly? I asked politely. She had nothing more than vague threats of legal action. The board voted unanimously to proceed according to the established procedures. 2 weeks later, Jennifer paid the overdue amounts, but conveniently forgot about the fines and administrative fees. Just like before, her payment was applied first to fines and fees, leaving the regular monthly payment still outstanding in the records. It's like she's reading a manual on how to do everything wrong, our treasurer commented as she recorded the transaction. Every step she takes only makes things worse for her. The process continued for another 2 months. Jennifer made partial payments, contested amounts via email, never through the official channels she had set up, and tried to pressure individual board members. Every move she made only strengthened our case. The total amount now due is $17,450, Mr. Anderson announced during our executive meeting. More than 80% of it is fines and administrative fees, using the same structure she applied to everyone else. What's the next step? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Legally, we can proceed with foreclosure. The lien has been registered for over 90 days, our attempts at resolution are documented, and she has received all the legally required notices. The board voted to proceed. It wasn't a decision taken lightly, but we felt a collective responsibility to show that the rules now applied equally to everyone. Jennifer's auction notice was published in the legal section of the local newspaper and the county records. The date was set exactly 45 days from then, the legal minimum period that Jennifer always used against others. A week later, I received a call from my lawyer. Ryan, you won't believe it. Jennifer is trying to sell the house quickly to avoid the auction, but the lien is complicating everything. Her real estate agent called to see if you'd accept a deal. What's the offer? Full payment of all overdue fees and fines, plus a formal letter of apology and an agreement that she will never serve on any HOA board again. Interesting, but not enough, I replied after thinking it over. The damage she's done to the community goes far beyond money. I'll consult with the board, but I think we should see this legal process through to the end. The board agreed unanimously. Jennifer Daniels would now face the same system she had relentlessly used against others for so long. 2 weeks before the auction, I ran into Jennifer at the local supermarket. She looked dejected, no longer exuding the dominant attitude she once had. For a moment, I felt a pang of compassion, but then I remembered all the family she'd hurt, the elderly forced to pay absurd fines for trivial infractions. "Mr. Montgomery," she said in a voice stripped of its usual arrogance, "we need to talk like civilized adults." "I'm always open to a dialogue, Ms. Daniels. You don't understand. If my house goes to auction, I'll lose everything. The starting bid won't cover even half of what I owe on my mortgage. And with my current credit score, I won't get another loan. I understand your concern. It's exactly how I felt when my house was auctioned for a fabricated debt. That was..." She hesitated. "That was just a standard HOA procedure." "And so is this," I replied calmly. "It's a standard procedure, following the rules you created." She gripped her shopping cart so tight that her knuckles went white. "What do you want, Ryan? Revenge? Are you satisfied now?" "This isn't about revenge, Jennifer. It's about equality under the rules. For years, you acted as if you were above the bylaws you imposed on everyone else. Now, you're facing the same consequences that so many others have endured." On the day of the auction, the courthouse lobby was less crowded than the day my house was auctioned. Big properties like Jennifer's corner mansion attract a very specific group of buyers. I noticed several professional investors carefully crunching their numbers. Jennifer arrived at the very last minute, accompanied by a lawyer who looked as nervous as she did. They took seats in the back row, trying to blend in. The auctioneer announced the property, Lot 23, property in Pinecrest Gardens, starting bid $180,000. An investor made the opening bid. Another raised it to $200,000. A third reached $230,000. The bid slowly climbed until they seemed to level off around $275,000. That was significantly less than the property's market value, which was about $950,000. But considering the existing mortgages and the tense market, the investors were being cautious. $275,000, going once. The auctioneer began. I raised my paddle. $300,000. Jennifer gasped audibly. Her lawyer put his hand on her arm, trying to calm her down. The leading investor considered for a moment, then shook his head. The others seemed to have reached their limit. $300,000, going once, twice. Then another investor, who had remained quiet until now, raised his paddle. $325,000. I considered for a moment. My goal was never really to buy Jennifer's mansion, it would have been an investment far beyond my financial reach. My presence there was symbolic, a demonstration that the system now worked equally for everyone. I decided to let the bidding continue without my participation. Eventually, the property was sold for $375,000, the same amount for which I had bought my own house back. When the gavel fell, Jennifer covered her face with her hands. Her world was collapsing just as she had done with so many others. As she headed for the exit, our eyes met. There was no victory in my stare, just a silent acknowledgement. The rules she forged as weapons against others had finally turned against her. Subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to get access to more stories like this. The system that Jennifer created to wield power didn't disappear, it just started working as it should have from the beginning, fairly, transparently, and equally for all the residents of Pinecrest Gardens.